year to 18 months, or probably 2 years at the outside. We've seen a core of nations within Asia, and this was the Eurasian Economic Area, which is really comprised of Belarusia and various stans in the middle, sort of between China and Russia, also including Russia and China. We're trying to set up a currency which would be used for trade settlement purposes only, rather than circulating alongside national currencies. We haven't heard anything more on that, but it is clear the way the geopolitical situation is evolving that that plan is not dead, and they are evolving towards that direction. I mean, the interesting thing is that if you like, an alternative geopolitical entity compared with the American and NATO-led political entities with which we are more familiar. And if you look at the populations involved, I think in rough terms, America and its allies, if you look at the Asian bloc, it works out about 57% of the global population. So they're already sort of more or less twice the size of us in terms of people. Now, in the old days, we wouldn't have worried about this because, impoverished nomads who don't really figure in the economy. So what? Who cares? But actually, things have changed hugely in Asia. You've got communications which are being set up, it's developing. Those economies are in an industrial revolution which is ongoing, despite the problems we see in China in the property sector. It's still ongoing. And we even see that one of the two founding partners of the petrodollar, Saudi Arabia, the other one obviously being America, but Saudi Arabia is now flirting with the idea of joining BRICS. And I have known for some time that in terms of long-term strategic planning, the Arab world have increasingly taken the view that their future is with Asia and not with America and Europe. And apart from anything else, I mean, we're pursuing this decarbonization thing very aggressively. So that sends a signal to all the hydrocarbon producers that their future is not with us. So you can see that, the world has gone into two lumps. There is us, and we're relying on our financial markets, if you like, to drive things. And you've got a commodity-driven bloc, which is at least twice the size of us, centered on Asia, and also incorporating the whole of sub-Saharan Africa, certain countries in South America as well. I mean, this is enormous. It's far bigger than us. And these guys are all commodity-driven, and they will seek protection from a collapse in our currencies by tying their currencies somehow towards into their commoditized or the commodity-driven economies. So whether they go on the gold standard or whatever in the fullness of time, I don't know, we'll have to see. I mean, I just noticed there is a marked reluctance of every central bank in the world to part with any gold whatsoever. They seem it's all right for them, but it's not all right for us. So, that I think is a development which we will have to see closer to the time. But meanwhile, the research that I have done has shown quite clearly that when you look at the volatility in commodity prices and you compare the volatility in fiat currencies, which obviously what we watch the dollar price of copper, for example, dollar price of oil, compare it with the gold price for copper, oil, whatever it is. I mean, it's been very, very stable in gold terms. All the volatility is actually in the fiat currencies, which is completely the other way around from where we think. We think that actually it's the copper price being volatile or the oil price being volatile. It's not. It's our currency. It's our currency against those individual commodities. I mean, there are times when the price of oil will move faster than the price of copper or faster than the price of lithium or whatever. It doesn't matter because it's a question of allocation where the currency goes. But the volatility is in the currency, and that needs to be thought about very, very deeply. It actually destroys the whole concept of trying to run an economy on a fiat currency. It's a fascinating conclusion. The first thing I would say is that gold is money. It is not an investment. Now, what I mean by that is that if you acquire physical gold, it must be with the intention to eventually spend it, not trade it in. This is a very important distinction. Most people who buy gold in an ETF or something like that, they view it as a hedge, maybe, against the declining situation. But essentially what they're doing is they're doing exactly the same thing they do with Bitcoin. They're looking at it, I can buy gold, say, currently at 1736. I think it's going to go to 2000. So I'm going to buy it so I can sell it at 2000. That is not the purpose of gold. Gold is money. It is there to be spent. And to put this into context, as JP Morgan himself said, I think head of in Congress, in a speech to Congress in 1912, money is gold and nothing else. All the rest is credit. And he wasn't stating an opinion, he was stating a legal fact, which is still true today. And that is the way you've got to look at it. Now, we are where we are with a number of factors behind it. We saw something which came out from Peter Hambro, who worked in bullion markets going back, I think, into the late 70s. And he stated quite clearly, and he was in the loop, and he knew all about this, that the Bank of International Settlements, following the end of the Bretton Woods, pursued a campaign working with major central banks to suppress the price of gold. The whole reason that futures markets and the LBMA forward market evolved was to create artificial supply to take out demand for gold. And this was a point that Peter Hambro made. So what do we see today? We see JP Morgan, and also to a lesser extent Citicorp, are the two major means whereby the US government has been suppressing the price of gold. Now, I'm not saying that the price should be any different from where it is. I'm just saying that this is what has been happening. If we see this suppression diminishing, and I think it might be diminishing a little bit because it's no longer makes any sense for banks who have been rumbled to continue to do this to the same extent that they have in the past. They might have to find other means to try and sit on the price of gold. I suspect that the outlook for gold might improve just from the point of view of that suppression being diminished. The other problem with it, of course, is that the longer you suppress the price of gold, the more you give the opportunity to foreign central banks, particularly in Asia, to accumulate physical gold, which is what they have been doing. So actually, on many sense, the original purpose of suppressing the price of gold was to allow the dollar to fulfill its void, if you like, as the reserve asset on bank balance sheets. That situation has passed. So really what we're looking at now is the need to suppress gold, because if the gold price rises, it undermines credibility in the paper currencies. So that is a different thing. And I think that's why it has continued, but probably why it cannot continue in a sense. So I think that is, if you like, that background. Accepting that the whole point of hoarding gold, physical gold, holding gold, is that it is money and it is to be spent. Then if you couple that with the regularity of banking crises, and the next one coming up, which we are on the verge of, as we've already discussed, is likely to be extremely severe, what I would see is crisis first, and I would see the reaction in the gold price second. I would put in a slight proviso, and that is that virtually everybody in the financial system, except perhaps the people who watch this sort of video, they do not understand that gold actually is legal money. They do not understand the consequences of the public rejection of a fiat currency and how that really does just remove its value entirely.